election deadline for most people to vote by mail. There are some specific procedures and assistance available for folks with disabilities for this election. So the Ability Center has invited a representative from our Lucas County Board of Elections, Kurt Young, to come on this call and educate us on the different procedures and deadlines and how we can get out the vote. So with that, Kurt, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you get going.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the Ability Center for setting this up and everybody for tuning in. I am Kurt Young. I'm one of your 4 members of the Lucas County Board of Elections. With everything we do, we are bipartisan. So for the 2 major political parties, we have 2 members of the board each, myself and Brenda Hill for the Democrats, Chairman David Carmel and Fritz Schoen for the Republican Party. And my fellow board members would like to say good morning, and they wish they could join you today along with our senior staff, Director Olivera Scott and Deputy Director Tim Monaco. Due to the crisis, there wasn't in-person voting for March 17th primary, and there's some confusion about the date because the secretary was trying to scramble and try to make something happen due to that. I did want to give a little bit of background real quick about what happened. The secretary, the governor, and Dr. Acton got a briefing from the CDC on March 16th in the morning, and to use the secretary's own words, it scared the bejesus out of them. Basically, they were dead set, as were we as a board, on making this election available to you on March 17th in person. And based on the CDC's advice, Dr. Acton issued an order at 10:30 the night before, basically not allowing us to open any of the polling places up. There was some litigation, but as Katie said correctly, the General Assembly stepped in and got things fixed. So there wasn't in-person voting, but I do want to make sure everybody who knows this, that if you did vote at the Early Vote Center by 2 p.m. on March 16th or before, or you mailed in your absentee ballot before that, you don't need to vote again. Your votes are there. We at the Board of Elections are used to holding on to ballots and keeping them secure for months at a time. They're under double lock and key and all the safety protocols that we use to make sure you have your votes kept safe. So you don't need to worry about that. For those of you who didn't get an opportunity to vote before the March 17th deadline, let me talk to you a little bit about the process. First, I want to tell you, though, I want to make sure everybody's aware of what's on the ballot this year. So just real quick, for everybody countywide, there is the issue 3 TARTA levy. There are also 2 local issues on the ballot for the primary. Issue 1 is the City of Toledo's 3/4% income tax. And I'm going to make Sam Melton, who's on the call, if anybody has questions on that, answer that one later, but that's not what this is about. Issue 2 is a Village of Swanton Parks and Recs levy. And again, that is on the ballot. If you're an independent, those issues should be on your ballot for where you're at, depending on where you're registered to vote. But otherwise, primary is about a political party picking who will be their leaders and their candidates in the general election. Now, in Ohio, you declare your party affiliation by voting in the partisan primary like this. So you don't need to have pre-registered as any of the parties that have a primary to do this. If you're a Democrat and you ask for a Democratic ballot, you get one. If you're not yet a Democrat and you ask for a Democratic ballot, welcome to the Democratic Party. You're part of us until the next partisan election if you decide to change. Same is true with the Republican Party. There are 3 parties this year having partisan primaries: the Libertarian Party, the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party. So if you're one of those 3 parties and you ask for a partisan ballot, you will get that. Otherwise, if you ask for a ballot, you're going to get what's called an issues-only ballot. Now, let me tell you how to vote, because there is some big confusion on this one. If you are someone with a qualifying disability, we will have the Lucas County Board of Elections Early Vote Center open for you on April 28th, the normal times we would have for election, from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And I want to talk a little bit about our voting equipment. First of all, again, we'll be taking all the procedures and processes we can to make that sure that that's a safe experience for you. Social distancing, we'll be sanitizing our gear. We've got capabilities to do that. We were ready to do that on March 17th. All of our express voting machines are fully ADA compliant. That's one of the things we love about our new machines, is that they all, not just one per polling place, but all of our machines have the ability to deal with vision issues, mobility issues, and the like. So we love that about that. So you will, if you have vision issues, each machine has the ability to offer you, and we have headsets on site if you want to bring your own more comfortable with, that will read you the ballot on screen. All are adjustable in height with a keypad and braille markings that can be given to you if you can't reach the screens in because of those issues. And again, if mobility issues even prevent you, or health issues prevent you from coming into the polling place that day, we can have somebody make sure we know you're coming. And if you can, have somebody come with you that can come in the building and tell us, but we will send a bipartisan team out with a paper ballot to your vehicle. This is a requirement of Ohio law and federal law, and we will comply with it fully. So we can bring that. Also, if you need assistance, if you feel more comfortable with someone assisting you in marking your ballot, you can. They cannot be your employer, an agent of your employer, an agent of your union, or a candidate whose name appears in the ballot in your precinct. But other than that, anyone you designate can assist you always in voting. So make sure you're aware of that. So that's the first thing, is that we can do in-person voting for people who need to. But the other way is to request an absentee ballot. Now, we talked about this a little bit, the group of us, before we got on the call, so I want to make sure everybody knows this. We're not going to be mailing everybody a ballot. We're not going to get them out automatically. That's not what the General Assembly authorized. But let me talk to you a little bit about what you can do to get a ballot, okay? First, if you don't have any visual issues and you want a standard ballot, there's two ways to request it. And unfortunately, I was setting up here today and I realized I don't have my props with me, so I'm going to have to do this a little bit without the props. There is a form. If you have the capability to print and go on the internet, the Secretary of State has a Form 11A, and I was going to show you one, but again, unfortunately, I have some paper next door to me right now, but I don't have my props with me for this. But Form 11A is available on the internet. You can print one out, or we can mail you one. The phone number, if you're ready to take that down for the Board of Elections, is 419-213-4001. And we can take down your information and mail one to you. However, given the time frames, we're 2 weeks to Election Day. If you don't want to wait for that, if you don't have the capabilities to print, you can do it with a blank piece of paper. In fact, I may realize here my scrap paper and everything may be my props. So hold on a second, everybody. Sorry, my presentation is a little more fumbly and stumbly than I thought it was going to be, but aha. Here, if you can see it, is a Form 11A. This is the form that you would need to do normally to fill out and get to us. However, the Secretary has allowed for us to do this previously, and we can do it now. Blank piece of paper will do, okay? Now, there's certain information you need to get on the form or the blank piece of paper, so I want to walk everybody through that. First of all, on the form and on your blank piece of paper, either one, please print your name as it appears in the poll book, the name you're registered under. Second of all, your date of birth. Third, the address that you are registered to vote at, because we need to, again, that's what makes you eligible to vote on certain issues. Next is your mailing address. If you need us to send this to a different address, we need to know that. The next thing, and this is what we say when we say that voting by mail, voting by absentee is totally safe, the Secretary says it, we're saying it, is that from fraud is that you have to give us some form of identification. Now, the easiest is the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. You can also use your Ohio driver's license or ID number. That's 2 letters followed by 6 numbers. Or if you have alternative ID, and we accept a number of them, I'm going to go through some of them right now, you can get us a copy of that. But again, that supposes that people have access to copiers. But if you do have access to copy or a copy of one of these things, you can give us a utility bill with your current address that they're registered at, a bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government document not from us, or a military ID can suffice. That's another form of alternate ID. Then you need to tell us what election you're going to vote in. Now, there's a lot of confusion on this. Let me tell you, the directive from the Secretary says we're not supposed to exclude you from voting if you get the date wrong. But the primary was March 17th, so that's the date you should put under the election, is the March 17th election. And again, if you're an independent and want an issues only ballot, please indicate that, or Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian. And then at the bottom of the form, and this is something, again, you can do on the blank piece of paper, just a statement that you're a qualified elector, also known as a voter, and you want the ballot and that these statements are true. Then you need to sign and date either the piece of paper or the form. Now, again, at the bottom of the form, it says to give us, if you want to, your contact information, phone number and email if you have one. If you can, please put that on there, okay? Whether you're using the form or the blank piece of paper. Why? Because it lets us fix any issues quicker. And again, we're 2 weeks to election day right now, so we want to make sure we fix issues. If we contact you, if you left something off the form or the paper, if we can contact you and get that information, we still need to have you sign one with all the information correct on it, but we can get your ballot ready to go out the minute we get that information. So we would like you to do that if you can. Now, if you can't mail that back or you want to get things back quicker, there is a way to do that. I also want to point out, by the way, if you need a remote marking device, the secretary has created Form 11G for that. That's a special form. By the way, that one can be done right on the website. So if you have internet access and need remote marking capabilities, that's available with that 11G form on the internet. Now, how do you get the form back to us? Well, you can mail it. And I want to give you the address. The Lucas County Board of Elections is at One Government Center, Suite 300, Toledo, Ohio, 43604. Again, that's One Government Center, Suite 300, Toledo, Ohio, 43604. But for some folks, and understand, our mail goes mostly up to the Pontiac, Detroit area for sorting. That's going to get tight as far as time frames. So we've got another way to do this. By directive of the secretary, we have a 24/7 secure drop box. It's at One Government Center. And if you're not familiar, One Government Center is in downtown Toledo at the corner of Jackson and Erie Street. Now, you're not going to have to come in. You're not allowed in One Government Center right now. It's outside the building. It's covered by security cameras. You can get in without any human contact on the outside of the building. It's on the Jackson or Fountain in front of the building, or south side if you're into directions for where that is on the building. But it's on the outside. It's there 24/7. We're emptying it a couple of times a day because it's getting a little bit filled. Now, if you do all that, there is a chance you're going to get, instead of a regular ballot, you're going to get what's called a provisional ballot. Provisional ballots are there to make sure we give the maximum chance for you to get a chance to vote. Usually this means there's some issue we need to clean up. For instance, if you before asked for a ballot and didn't get one, the second one we mail you is going to be a provisional. Why? Because we don't want you to be able to have two ballots. The old thing about vote early and often, we don't allow that. Okay, you get one vote. So that's one of the safeguards we do. If you've moved, for instance, and didn't update your registration, you can still vote a provisional ballot. And two things about that: as long as you do that properly, we're going to re-register you for the November election, and that will, if done properly, count. With the provisional, and again, I apologize, our staff was supposed to make me a copy of this, you're going to get an envelope with it. When we mail you a ballot of any type, there is going to be an envelope you need to complete in there, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, along with how to mark your ballot. But you need to make sure you fill out the information on those security envelopes, both on the provisional and a regular ballot, because that's how we make sure you're supposed to get to vote. Okay. Now, when you get a ballot, you're going to get a paper ballot. And again, I have gotten you, you're not going to be able to see it too well on this because our proof of ballots, we don't print them out normal size if we let you print them out. Now, we do let people look at this. If you see there's a watermark that says it's proof, this is my personal proof ballot. This is what I got to look at before I went to vote if I wanted to. It's also what I got to look at as a party chair and one of the board members to make sure we got it right. We need to get you to do, we need to make sure that you are somebody who's supposed to vote. So again, there's going to be a security envelope with that. So we do this, we split this up, okay? The security envelope for provisional and your regular ballots are so we as the Board of Elections can make sure you're somebody who's supposed to get to vote without knowing what your votes are about. I can tell you that you have total anonymity when you vote. Even as a board member, unless you're the only voter in a precinct and there's some issue with us understanding what you marked, I will never know, or any board member will know, or any board employee will know what your vote was. We separate those. If there's an issue about marking your ballot and understanding what you meant to put on there, The 4 board members will look, we do it on a computer screen, but we will look at your marks and decide if we can figure out what your intent was. But we will not know your name. It'll be ballot number 2356 that we're looking at. But we don't want to be where we're trying to figure that out for you. We want your intent to be known fully and clearly. So what should you do? Well, like I said, this is mine, and I'm gonna pick on myself because right here on my ballot, and again, you're not gonna see it well. I'll try to put it up to the camera somewhat what I'm pointing at. But down here, one of the decisions that I need to make on my ballot here is who am I gonna vote for the central committee of my party for the county. Well, I'm the candidate and the only candidate on that. If I want to vote for myself, there is an oval next to each candidate's name. And we need you as best you can to fill in that oval fully. So I can promise you again, the one you're going to get in the mail is much larger print. You're going to be able to see that. But again, when you do it, please use a pen. Black is preferred. Fill in the oval fully, 1 per race. Don't use a check. Don't use an X. Don't make it that the 4 of us have to vote and decide what your intent is. What I'm trying to tell you is because we don't like that very much. We don't like to have to sit there and guess what you meant. And we don't like to even consider the possibility your vote on that particular race won't count. Now, when you return your ballot, again, there's going to be a return envelope and a security envelope, either provisional or regular security envelope. Normally, we require you to pay the postage to mail back your ballot. However, because of this election, the Secretary and the General Assembly have authorized us to pay your postage. Normally, there's a warning about not using stamps or a meter or postage.com, but the General Assembly has paid for your postage. So it's going to be a little confusing because the envelopes were pre-printed and they're going to have warnings about not using a postage meter on them. And then there's going to be a postage meter mark on it, okay? We have paid your postage, so you can just stick it in that envelope and mail it back to us. So if you want to use the mail, you can mail it back to us via US mail, and it will count as long as it's postmarked by April 27th. That will count. However, if you want to make sure it gets there quicker, option number 2 is going to be you or a friend or family member can put that in that drop box I was telling you about 24/7 on the South Fountain Jackson Street side of One Government Center. Or option 3, you can get us to us at the Early Vote Center of the Board of Elections on April 28th by 7:30 p.m. But get it to us. Again, this is something that we don't want to see this crisis take away your right to vote. People in and out of uniforms have fought to make sure that you get this right to vote. So that's what we want to emphasize here is we're here to try to help make this happen. Now, I will ask when you call the board, please understand, we are doing something we've never done before, and our staff is doing everything they can. We brought in all of our seasonal employees that we have trained. We have all of our regular employees working max overtime. Unfortunately, we have 2 members of our staff whose job it is every day just to try to get the voicemails we can't get to. We will get back to you and we will answer questions and we will get this done. But again, we want to make sure that this gets to you and gets back to us and your votes count. So that's the gist of how to do this. I want to be sure to be available for questions. So what questions do you have for me?
Well, Kurt, this is Katie again. Just before we move on, thank you so much for being here and providing all that information. Do you mind if I just, if I ask a few questions based on things that we've gotten before?
Yeah, and I'm watching the group chat. I just realized there was some stuff going up, and I apologize. I wasn't looking at it while I was talking. So, but yeah, absolutely. I'd love to answer questions.
Okay, so just a few questions, and some of these you've already answered, but just to make sure folks are getting all the important information. Number 1, can you answer the question again? Is everyone going to receive a ballot in the mail?
No. Everyone is not going to receive a ballot in the mail. You will, and by the way, the secretary mailed to everybody. My wife, my daughter, and I all got our postcards along with my mother-in-law, and I can tell you we've all voted. So everybody got the postcard explaining you need to request one. You will not get a ballot. You won't even get an application. You just got the postcard. You need to request that application or do it on the plain piece of paper.
So, so what's the deadline for requesting the application?
I believe it's the 26th, I believe. I could be wrong on that date, but we're coming up on it very quickly. So go ahead and again, use the piece of paper if you have the wherewithal to print it. Also, I can tell you a number of community groups are trying to have stations out there in the community. A number of African-American churches have outside of their church buildings boxes where you can go and grab one right now. We have worked with Meijer and Kroger. I forgot to mention that earlier. Most of the Kroger stores, and I believe most, if not all, the Meijer stores will have the form. But again, it doesn't have to be the form. It can be any piece of paper where you put the information I talked about.
Okay, great. But you can request that, so you can request that by going to one of those community groups or online, or can someone call the Board of Elections and have them
Absolutely.
send? Okay.
Yeah, and let me give you, again, I had the number earlier. I wrote some notes here, so I'm going to scroll back. Our main line number is 419-213-4001.
And then for anyone who has a disability and needs to vote in person, is there any special procedures for being able to do that, or
the early vote center, Katie, on April 28th will be available. You don't need to call in advance. However, if you do want to tell us you're coming, if you need us to come out to the vehicle, it's helpful. It is not required. Okay. Any election, not just this one, but any election, if you have mobility issues and need us to come to you, we will come to you. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. My wife in 2002 had just given birth to our son, and the Board of Elections sent a bipartisan team to her hospital bed in Toledo Hospital to vote her at that day. She was going to vote in person and gave birth to our son instead. So that we will send a bipartisan team to you, but you can do that at any polling location. Now on April 28th, 2020, that's going to be the early vote center. That is at the corner of 13th Street and Monroe in Toledo.
Okay, great. And then if anyone has questions, you already gave the phone number for Board of Elections. And then I'm sure they can also call Ohio Secretary of State for more general information.
Absolutely. And the Secretary has personnel helping with this. And I am going to apologize. I'm not an expert on our ADA compliance work. The Secretary has an expert. He has checked out our equipment, as I believe the Ability Center has helped us somewhat too, on checking our new express vote voting machines. Again, we want to emphasize that the voters, those machines at the early vote center are capable of working with you. Whatever you need, they can work with you. We're not doing the one voting machine per location. Every one of our polling machines, express vote, is adjustable for mobility issues, for vision issues, all of that.
Okay, great. Mail-in ballots have to be in by have to be postmarked by when?
April 27th on the postmark. Or again, if you're not going to make that, it's okay. You can drop that at the Board of Elections on the 28th by 7:30 p.m. So you can get those back to us. You don't have to mail that. Again, that's a directive from the General Assembly and the Secretary of State working with us that you can drop those off.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think before we move on to questions, I know that the ADA coordinator for the Ohio Secretary of State actually came on the call today, Brett Harbridge. I just wanted to see if Brett, if you had anything to add before we move on and open it up to questions. Is he unmuted?
I unmuted him.
Okay.
But he must not be still on.
Okay.
It's showing on the screen, but I don't see him.
Right.
All right. Well, we appreciate him coming on the call, and he is the statewide expert on disability access for our voting system. So, if folks have questions, the Secretary of State does also have an expert. And then we will open it up to questions for people on the call.
Okay. Jessica?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, one of the questions he answered, which was about the postage, that was kind of confusing because it said both please affix postage, and postage was on there. So that was something I had been interested in clearing up. Then the other thing, I read the instructions that were on the ballot and on the security envelope. And he mentioned just now on the call, Mr. Young said, please use a pin. That was not anywhere on the instructions that were on the ballot or the security envelope. And there was no instructions regarding any writing utensil. And I remembered that in the past, when I voted absentee, and granted that was a long time ago, I was probably in college, I believe something was said about a number 2 pencil. So that's what I used. That's fairly dark pencil.
Yes, it should be okay. You should
I'm
be
sorry?
okay on that. You should absolutely be okay on that. We just put out the pen because it reads a little bit better. Pencil will work. And again, if the machine doesn't pick it up on the first pass, we'll bring it to a bipartisan team. And if they're not 100% sure, and again, they will be if you use the number 2 pencil, believe me. But if they're not 100% sure, then they'll bring it to us as board members. So even if there's some indication of your intention to vote, but that's just a little tip off of our machines. It reads slightly better in pen than pencil.
The point I'm kind of making is it's not really a tip that you gave, because it wasn't really anywhere in all the materials you have on your website and on the ballot. That's not mentioned. So I kind of figured it couldn't be that important, or you would have mentioned it. If it was really essential to reading those ballots, you probably would have put that on there.
And it's more of a best practices. It's not required. No, it'll show up on a number 2 pencil just fine.
I think it's pretty dark. Also, if you have, I think something that we might be talking about is mobility and hand use for some people. A lot of people don't get that little circle perfectly. I mean, I understand you don't want marks all over the ballot, but if it ends up being a little bit, somewhat outside the lines,
You'll be fine. Jess, we will, worst case scenario, let's say it's because of your hand issues, you can't get it perfectly in there. If we've got a solid indication of who you meant to vote for, if the machines don't get it, again, it will come to the board members. And if we have any solid indication that's who you meant, we had somebody, I think, who had issues when we looked at the first round of the absentee mail-ins, where they couldn't hit the ovals, but they made clear indications next to the candidate that was who they wanted. It just comes to a board vote. And if we can, we'd rather have the machine do it and make sure you're covered. But no, we're not going to exclude you because of an issue with your hand and not hitting the ovals perfectly.
and you also don't exclude people if let's say somebody wrote April 28th through date of election instead of March, which I don't think I did. I think I put March 17th, but.
No, we will not. Absolutely. The secretary is our chief election law officer, and he gives us our guidance. When he announced on the night before the election, June 2nd was going to be it, and then the General Assembly changed it to April 28th as the deadline, we are allowed to use every date between March 17th and June 2nd inclusive. So yeah, you'll be fine.
In June 2nd even. Yeah, it's not going till June 2nd at this point, but, and what is it about provisional ballots? Who is it that gets, you said you might get a provisional ballot? Isn't that just for people that have moved recently, or?
Well, or for instance, let's say, Judge, this was your second request, and it doesn't sound like it was. You would know that because they would have told you. If you would put in a request for a ballot and we thought we got you one, we mailed you one and it didn't arrive, you would get a provisional for your second one. Now that will count still if that's the only one that gets mailed in. Provisional ballots, we wait until after election night. Look to see if there's a second one tries to come in. If there was, we would exclude that. Otherwise, as you said, you're correct. For people who moved or there's some issue about when you requested your signature, again, because of hand issues, your signature didn't seem to match the poll book, we would still, on your request, we would still give you a provisional ballot and try to give you an opportunity to explain to us as the board, hey, that really is my signature. My use of my hand, my ability with my hand has degenerated, and we would then allow that to come in. We want to make sure that everybody, again, if they have those issues, we've experienced that.
Okay, and I think I remember now, my security envelope I filled out with pen. The ballot itself I did with number 2 pencil, fairly dark.
And the security envelope will be looked at by human beings. A Democrat and Republican will compare everything on there with the poll book and registration, and then we'll separate the two. So you'll be fine, pen, pencil, whatever you mark the security envelope with. Our ballots, though, go through a reader on election night, so we can try to get you the results faster. The thing I do want to emphasize to everybody that we can't quite get the press to understand, elections don't end on election night, okay? We, as your board, will be looking for things on this and certify the election, even though it's April 28th is your deadline to get your ballot in. The election isn't official until May, because we have other issues we need to look at. Those provisionals, overseas ballots. Again, if your ballot is postmarked by April 27th, but we get it May 1st, it's still going to count. So again, that's just so the machine has an easier job on election night, so we can get you those unofficial results sooner than 2:30 in the morning.
And I also noticed that whenever you talk about mailing and anywhere, one government center, there's no like street number of Jackson. We just say one government center and whatever street, whatever suite.
Correct. That's how the post office has it, so that we can, you don't have to worry about getting that address.
All right, guys. So while everyone was talking, and thank you for answering those questions, we did get a message from Brett Harvage, who's the ADA coordinator for the Secretary of State. He said he has another meeting, so he's logging in, but he did give his office number if anybody has specific questions. So that number is 614-387-6039. 614-387-6039, and it's also available on the Secretary of State website. So if folks have specific questions about access that they think that the Ohio Secretary of State would answer better, he's invited folks to give him a call. And then we have another hand raised by Benjamin Lynn. Mr. Lynn, do you have some questions?
Yes. Thank you for organizing this. I just had a couple questions for Mr. Young, just to clarify some information. First off, for individuals who are disabled and wanting to vote on Election Day, April 28th in person, I just want to confirm they need to go to the early vote center, 1301 Monroe Street, correct?
Then that's correct. It's 1301 Monroe Street. It is on the corner of Monroe and 13th. For those who may be familiar, Owens Community College and Ohio Job and Family Services, it's the building known as the Source. The entrance, though, for our early vote center, and there is a marking with a sign on that side. It's right there at the corner of 13th and Monroe. The parking lot is free, and it's right there on 13th Street. And yes, it does have sufficient parking as far as handicap accessibility at the parking lot.
Great.
All right. Thank you. And I have two more quick questions. What are the hours that individuals can vote in person on Election Day if they need to?
It is, again, it's going to be 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. normal hours at the early vote center. That's a normal election day, is 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And again, we'll be available also for the ballots to be dropped off. So you can drop them off until 7:30 p.m. that night. I did forget to say, you have to have them postmarked by April 27th if you're mailing, and we need to get them by May 8th. So again, if you're not sure, if you're concerned about that, before the 28th, you can drop it at the drop box. It is secure. Or mail it, again, postmarked by the 27th and received by May 8th.
And we did get a question, Kurt, to go along with that, if someone can drop off a request for a ballot to that same drop box.
Yes, absolutely. You can both your request for a ballot can be dropped off at the drop box, or when it's completed and in the security envelope and signed, your ballot can be dropped in. We do ask that if you can, when you're dropping off your request for a ballot, put that in an envelope as well, just to protect it from moisture. But again, it's not necessary. Again, if all you've got at home is a plain piece of paper, notebook paper, whatever, as long as you get us the information we need, we will count that as a ballot request.
All right. Mr. Lynn, did you have any additional questions?
Yes, I just had one more quick one. for individuals who are looking to drop off their absentee ballot on the 28th, are they supposed to drop that off at the drop box outside One Government Center or the early vote center?
And Ben, I'm going to apologize and tell you I'm not 100% clear on that. My understanding, I believe, is the early vote center. So forgive me if I'm giving out false information on this one. I'm trying to get that for myself as well. I know for sure the drop box will be at One Government Center through the 27th. I believe we're going to transfer it over to the early vote center if possible on the 28th for the drop offs. But my apologies on the lack of clarity here. We're kind of doing this I hate to say it, by the seat of our pants, but that's what we're doing. So,
Kurt, is there a place someone might be able to go to find that out between now and
yes,
April?
I can. That's actually my job. So let me see if I can find that out and get that to you so we can get that out. Again, I apologize. That's the one issue I couldn't get a firm answer out of. That, again, my fault on that one.
Great. We have a hand raised by our very own council person, Sam Meldon. Do you have some questions, Sam?
Yeah, thanks for all of that. It feels like, Kurt, as we think about sharing all of this information, does it seem, to maybe clear up even that confusion on that last question, does it seem safest to treat the drop box like the early vote center, and then the early vote center as the only polling location in the county on the day of? So it just strikes me that we should actually advise people, if you're dropping off a ballot, do it by the 27th. If you plan on doing something on the 28th, just go vote on the 28th.
Unless you've requested an absentee ballot, because then if you come to the early vote center, you're going to have to vote a provisional at the absentee, or at the early vote center. I'm sorry.
My question actually was, there seems to be a little confusion on the date that you can actually request the ballot versus getting it postmarked. I mean, if I requested a ballot, when I requested my ballot right after this whole thing happened, it took me about 10 days to 2 weeks to get it back.
Yeah.
So if I don't request it until the 25th, how will I get it postmarked by the 27th?
That is my concern about this process, Sam. You hit the nail on the head, is that we are 2 weeks out from the deadline to have them back in. And again, generally speaking, our postage, if you mail it to the Board of Elections, the request, it's going to go to Pontiac, Michigan to a sorting center and come back to Toledo. Even if you lived, my office is a block, or my law office is a block from the early vote center. If I mailed something to the early vote center from here, we'll go to Pontiac, Michigan and come back.
Right.
And that a week to 10 days is a normal turnaround time on even getting the mail there. So again, yeah, the better call if you're getting close, if you have disability issues, we can't offer you in-person voting otherwise on the 28th. That's not what we were given authority to do. But if you have disability issues, you can vote in person on the 28th. We're telling people rather than mail, drop your request at that drop box now at One Government.
So this ties into a question that Kate Schwartz asked in the chat, which is this in a shareable PDF? And I just think, as Mallory, I see her taking notes, as she's doing such a good job to kind of distill this into a PDF or something that we can share. I'm sure that's your plan. I just think that if we can make sure to,
I just dropped the address, the web address for the English version of the PDF. And if you need me to get it in any other language, let me know. But it's in the chat right now, is a link to the Secretary's website for the Form 11A. It
just seems to me that when it comes to advising people, given the very, very difficult nature of this whole situation, because I mean, we're talking through some technicalities. I'm curious what you would think about this. Is it the safest approach to advise people that if you're going to request an absentee ballot, do that by tomorrow or Thursday? Or actually plan on voting at the early vote center on the 28th?
The sooner the better on the request. I mean, and again, if you have a disability, and we're not, I can't imagine a world where a poll worker is going to be asking for proof. I think that would be tremendously inappropriate.
Sure.
I cannot advise the general public to do what you're just saying, but anybody with a disability, absolutely, they have the right to come on election day and vote at the vote center. The sooner the better on getting us that request. And again, that's why we're making sure people know that they can use any sheet of paper. Again, in the chat is the link to the secretary's site where you can download it and print it if you got the wherewithal to do that. We will mail you one, but again, that's up to Pontiac and back on the return. So get us your request to the drop box if possible, and get us your ballot back to the drop box before, but otherwise come to the early vote center on the 28th.
Kurt, are there any, I know you mentioned, I'm sorry, Sam. I know you mentioned that there are a few community groups helping out. Would folks on the call have access to assistance from those groups?
Anybody can get assistance with them as far as that. Again, I know that, for instance, like let me take off my Board of Elections hat and put on my Democratic Party hat. We are mailing out to anybody who requests it. That form can be mailed to you by the Lucas County Democratic Party. A group that works with the minority community, particularly called, oh my God, why did my brain decide to go and lose that one? Come on, Sam, help me out here. Tina Butts and the movement. The movement is working with, I know they're working with Flock and they're working with other organizations to get churches and the like have, again, pickup boxes right outside of church buildings. And I don't have a full list of that, but I know it's a number of the African-American churches where you can just pull up and right on the door is a box where you can pull out copies of this. And again, the plain piece of paper, if you can get access to what we need, you need. And I can try to get you a picture we generated that's got the information you need off the form. So if you can, even if you can't get the form and look at it on a device and put that all on a piece of paper, there's the picture as well, so you can share pictures.
So there's a question from Kate Schwartz asking whether there might be a Toledo specific PDF with the instructions that you've been discussing on this call, rather than a state one that talks about, our specific Dropbox and that sort of thing. Do you know, is there one available through the Board of Elections?
I don't know that they've had an opportunity to generate one. I'd be happy to try to see if we can't. If not, I will try to generate one and share it with you.
Okay, wonderful. We have a hand raised from Representative Lisa Sebecki. Representative Sebecki, do you have a question?
Lavere with the Board of Elections asked the question, where do ballots get dropped off on election day, one government or early vote center or both? And just want to let the group know that our response back was one government center. So on election day, drop those ballots off if you have not mailed them, and postmark them by the 27th of April to please drop those off at one government center.
And the secure drop box.
Thank you all for doing this too.
And thank you for being on the call, Representative Sebecki, for that specific information.
My pleasure.
See, I'm not seeing, we do have another question from Melody. If somebody is using, a person with a disability is using paratransit and needs to vote in person on election day, do you know if there are any specific things that might help them out? I know in the past TARDA has offered free rides on election day, but I don't know if that is happening this time.
Let me check with them. I also know that there is a community group, Toledo Area Jobs with Justice, Interfaith Worker Justice, that normally works on transportation issues for folks on election day. They do free rides to the polls generally. I will try to reach out and see if they're going to be able to offer services as well. So we're going to have to check on that.
Yeah, because I think the other concern, which I'm seeing right here, is that right now TARPS is limiting trips to essential trips.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing any additional questions. Is there anything else before we wrap up? All right, Kurt, do you have any last words before we close off?
Well, first of all, again, I want to say thank you so much for doing this. We want to get the word out about this. And again, I will be available to answer questions. I would suggest, though, the main line is your best bet. Although, again, remember, we have 2 staffers whose job it is right now just to answer pick up the voicemail if we can't answer with the phone calls. So we will get back to you. If not, give me a moment. I apologize. I've stopped carrying my business card with me in this lovely thing, but I will give you my personal email with the Board of Elections. Actually, you know what, to make it easier for everybody, I'm going to put it into the chat so that you've got my my email, but it's kyoung@co.lucas.oh.us. That's my board member email. If you're having any issues, please contact me. Again, you all pay me to do this, so I'm happy to do it. Plus, it's my passion. So again, appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here and clarifying a lot of the information that we've heard kind of batted about the past month or so. And I would encourage everybody to get out there and vote. You know, this is an uncertain time. Everything is kind of unstable right now, but our voices are still important, and it's important to get our vote out there. So we've gotten some good resources.
Representative Bucky, did you have another question? Sorry, Katie.
No, go ahead.
All right, not a question. I'm just going to make a statement. First of all, I think you guys are doing this very, very much. But I also, as we're going through the primary, want you to know that we are looking towards a general because there is conversations about, potential, others as we go on into the primary. So as a General Assembly, when we come back to session, and if this matter is brought up, I want to make sure to connect with you all well to let you know if there's any changes about how the general election in November takes place. Because I think that's going to be very important that we make that decision sooner than later, so we're not sitting here in the same predicament we are in April. So I will work with you all to let you know when we are going to be making those decisions and then what those decisions are, so we can work closely together for the election as well as we're finishing the primary election. But I want to thank you all very much for having this conversation. I've taken some notes here for what we need to do better if this is the way we do elections in the future.
Can I just offer what the representative is saying? Under existing law right now, even if the General Assembly can't offer us any assistance, and I know Representative Sabecki and others will be pushing for that, under existing law right now, you can go ahead already and request your November 3rd absentee ballot, okay? We need to prepare as if this might have to be vote by mail again in November. So I would encourage you to think about doing that. You don't have to, we won't get you the ballot until this is all finalized later this year in October, but get your request. You can get that form. You can also fill one out for the November 3rd general election now, and we'll get you that ballot when the time's right.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for being on the call this morning. I hope we answered some questions and you got some good resources. So, Kurt gave you his email address and Brett Harbridge said he's open to questions as well. So if people have further questions, I'd encourage you to reach out to the Lucas County Board of Elections. And otherwise, I'd encourage you to get out there and request your ballot or get out there in person if you have a disability and do your voting.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.